Hi everyone, welcome to our live event today. We have top contributor Steve Cameron joining us, and we're going to be talking a little bit about remarketing and how we can get a little more creative with remarketing strategies as well. My name is Cassie. I'm a community manager for AdWords on our Google Advertiser community, which is where this event is living, and I'll let Steve introduce himself a bit too here. So Steve, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Cassie. Good morning to you. Good afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
For people that don't know, I'm based in Spain. I've been a top contributor for the last 3 years, I think. Here today to chat about remarketing.
Perfect. And I just want to remind everyone who's tuning in as well that this is a live event. So if you have questions that you have for me, for Steve, we'd love to hear them. Best place to leave those questions is actually going to be over in the Google Advertiser community. On the left side of the page, you'll see an events section, and there is an event page set up specifically for creative remarketing with top contributor Steve Cameron. And that's the best place to leave your questions. We'll be keeping an eye on that page and able to answer your questions as we go. So from there, I guess I'll turn it over to you, Steve, so we can get started a little bit. And I guess maybe you can just, why did you pick this topic in particular? And I guess why do you think it's, important?
I guess because, first of all, I'm kind of fascinated by remarketing. I know that's geeky, but I'm kind of fascinated by remarketing. One of the biggest problems that I think a lot of my clients are facing, and certainly what I see on the community and other blogs, is people kind of get what remarketing is, but I think most people just do it, if you like, out of the box. So, I want to do some remarketing. So I'm going to set up my audience, my remarketing list in AdWords, or my audience in analytics, and then I'm going to start a remarketing campaign. So they kind of work with the defaults, which means you're going to you're going to record all of your visitors. You're going to have the cookie duration is going to be 30 days because that's what it is by default. And then you're going to run your ads to everybody that visited your website over the last 30 days. And you're going to send them to, unfortunately, what a lot of people do is to the homepage or back to the same page that they saw before. Now, obviously, there are some differences if you're doing like shopping remarketing in shopping campaigns, but essentially, your sort of general AdWords campaigns, when you look at remarketing, that's what people tend to do. And I think that, like a lot of things with AdWords, there's a lot more just under the surface. And if you scratch just a little bit, you can find some real gems in there, and you can stretch your budget more. You can just improve the performance without having to really be that, if you like, expert and that detailed in the way that you do things. So that's kind of the fascination.
I totally agree, and I've seen a lot of the same thing too. I think a part of it also for people who haven't done any sort of remarketing in their campaigns before is it's sort of like, okay, well, this is brand new to me and I want to try it out, right? And so they don't want to invest a ton of time or money into it. But then what ends up happening is, okay, we try it out, great, it's working, and then kind of forget that there are other things that you could then try and keep testing and optimizing. So I guess if I were someone who had started out with remarketing and had that really basic, all visitors, 30 days, sending people to my homepage perhaps, where would you, I guess, recommend that I would get started? Like, what are some things that I should start to consider?
Well, I think first of all, maybe we need to go back a little bit and just get an idea of what we mean by remarketing. I know that this is probably very basic for a lot of people, but essentially, let's just cover it so that we can move forward from there.
Yeah, let's be on the safe side.
When we start building a remarketing list, what we're doing is we're basically tagging people with a cookie, people who visit our website. What a lot of people, I think, sometimes don't realize is that we're actually tagging everybody who comes to our website. It's not just people that saw our ads and went to our website, it's everybody. So it's ourselves, it's our friends and family, it's our office colleagues, it's our existing customers, it's anyone who came through our Facebook page, through any email campaigns we've done, through any other type of referral like directory listings or anything else. Yeah. Everybody that found us, everyone that's visited our website gets cookied, unless they've got their cookies disabled, which nobody does. So just about everybody's going onto the list.
Yeah.
What we then do is we can target that audience to send specific ads to those people. Okay, so this raises a number of very fundamental questions. First of all, like, do we actually want to remarket to everyone that's visited our website? There isn't much point in remarketing to ourselves, for example, because we know about ourselves. I mean, and there's not much point in us remarketing the same way to an existing customer or someone who visited our website and bounced off and didn't stay. I mean, I think we would all recognize that those are two very different kinds of people. Someone who's already bought from us, someone who came to the website, bounced off without visiting any other page. If we were in a face-to-face situation with them as a salesman and we had the opportunity to talk to them again, we would talk to them very differently. Mm-hmm. So there's the people. Then there's also, there are all kinds of other things that we know about these people. So we know where they are. We know what language they speak. We know what pages they looked at on our website. We know how long they spent on the site. We know which pages and how many pages they looked at. We know if they got into our shopping cart process, our checkout process, and abandoned. We know if they completed a purchase. So there's a whole wealth of information that we tend to forget about. And I think that gives us an opportunity to break up the audience, and rather than have a one-size-fits-all, start thinking about how we can segment them. And we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
The other thing which I think is important is that this whole 30-day thing, that's really, I mean, I don't know why they decided 30 days. It just seems like a nice round number. But actually, you can set the list to 540 days as a maximum, which is 18 months. That's a long time. I mean, that's as long as you're likely to ever need. If you can't get someone back to your website in 18 months, then chances are they don't want to come.
Yeah.
So, and you can set it for any period from 1 day right up to 540 days. Mm-hmm. So when you think about that also gives you a huge potential in terms of not just who you can target, but when you can target them. Okay. Yeah. And I guess the other thing, I wrote down a couple of things, a couple of points that I thought were really important, is that people think about remarketing, about marketing to a particular group of people. Mm-hmm. You can also exclude groups of people, which I think a lot of people forget. So, you can exclude people if they're just not going to be interesting to you. So going back to one of the first things I said was that you target everybody. Imagine you serve Australia and you get visitors who find you from Google organic search or from a directory listing or a link on a blog somewhere, and they're in the United States. No matter how good a company you are, depending on your service, they're unlike, if you're a local vet, then someone from the States is not going to take their dog to see you in Australia. Okay? So again, there are going to be people you simply don't want to remarket to, because they will never become customers however good your campaign is. And I'm saying it's these kind of considerations which I think once you begin on that path, you start to see more and more possibilities. So if you ask me where would you start? Well, the first thing I do is to tell you to stop doing what you're already doing. So like, stop that campaign that targets everybody and sends them to your website. the first thing I think I would do, and the first thing I generally do, is I set up a remarketing list with a 540-day duration. The reason for that is that just starts catching everybody for as long as I can get them. So I can then break that down however I want to later, but at least I'm now collecting everybody. Okay. After that, I can decide what I then want to do. But I want to make sure that I get everybody. And interestingly, when we published a piece the other day, someone came on and said, should I build my lists in AdWords or should I build them in analytics?
Right.
Now, I don't know what you feel about. Well, what do you feel about this before I say what my answer was? What do you think?
Well, so in my experience working with customers, the AdWords remarketing tag works perfectly fine, but I found that it was actually a little bit easier to build specific and I guess like more complex lists in analytics. The nice thing about analytics also that I remember just from working with a lot of different customers is that whereas with the AdWords tag that's going back to your website, putting another piece of code there for the remarketing tag, on analytics, if you already have analytics on your site, you're good to go. You can just sort of enable it in your account and pretty much get started from there. So I personally liked analytics better. What about you?
Well, I find I do everything through analytics now. Okay. I mean, for the last year or so, I've done it all through analytics. And the reason I do that is because I find that there's a lot of segmentation that you can do very simply in analytics, which you just can't do with the remarketing well, you can't do it easily with the remarketing in AdWords. So for example, if you put the remarketing tag on every page on your website, you will not know directly in AdWords if a visitor bounced.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you do have some analytics information in there that you can draw in, but you can't just segment out someone who bounced unless you say people who visited this page and didn't visit any other page, and that is very complex, you know. So it's easy in analytics. You can build segments. So you can build segments for people who, for example, showed certain engagement patterns. So someone who spent more than 4 minutes on your website and looked at more than 8 pages. That could become a segment, and that could then be converted into a remarketing list. Now, obviously, someone who showed a greater level of engagement, again, you would speak to them differently, you would advertise to them differently, you could have a slightly different message or a more powerful message, a stronger call to action, perhaps slightly more aggressive marketing towards that person because they've already demonstrated that they're a little hotter as a prospect.
Yeah.
So, you know, I personally, I find it is easier, but it's also, there's more control over the, if you like, the personas and the complexion of your lists within analytics than there is in AdWords.
Yeah. So I guess thing one, obviously, so maybe try setting things up in analytics, but I think either way it will work. But yeah, I agree totally that analytics, we have quite a bit more control. And that was the other thing that I really liked too with helping people set up the remarketing list, the fact that you can build that segment, or if they already have segments that they use all the time in analytics, right? You can just take that and convert it into an audience.
I think the other thing as well is, you know, as you said, you don't have to add that extra bit of code.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if you don't already have analytics on your website, don't even start doing remarketing because you know you should be. Analytics should be. I'm amazed how many audits we do, and people just don't have analytics on their website. So, you know, that should be a first thing. You know, get your universal analytics on your website, and immediately activate the remarketing. Get your all-user 540-day list up and running, and then you can segment from there going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next thing that I would do is I think about where I want people to come to on the website when I bring them back. We have to remember that these people have already been to the website. So, you know, just taking them back to the same page they didn't convert on last time, it's kind of lazy, all right? So I find there are some interesting things that you can do. I mean, in shopping, it's a slightly different deal because people are maybe still in the market for buying what you were selling.
Yeah.
But for example, if it's a lead generation client and someone's coming back, then maybe offering them some kind of free trial or some kind of white paper download or some kind of additional bonus that they didn't get. And maybe even on the landing page, welcoming them back because they have been here before, and it doesn't hurt to say something like, welcome back, we're glad you came back, and because you've come back, we're now going to offer you this as something that we don't offer to everybody when they just land on the website.
Yeah.
As I say, I think it's sometimes playing a little bit with the psychology, thinking about specifically what you want to tell people. And again, this is kind of where the segmentation comes in, because let's say you're an insurance company, and you're like a brokerage, and you have auto insurance, home insurance, and health insurance.
Yeah.
If someone's been to your website and looked at auto insurance, there's little point in remarketing to them and sending them back to the homepage where they've then got to look again. Where's the thing for
where's the auto insurance? Yep.
You send them straight back to what they were looking at previously. That's an obvious example, I guess. But I think for most businesses, people are looking for specific things, and they've shown you that during their first visit, they've shown you what it was they were actually interested in. So if they're actually interested in that, then that's what you should show them again. I know it sounds obvious now, but it's surprising how often we don't do that, Well,
and it's sort of about making it that quickest, easiest path to conversion, right? And not adding in those extra steps when someone has shown you that they are most interested in a particular thing, making it easy for them to get that information.
I know it's cliche, but every time someone has to click, it's also an opportunity for them to leave the site. If they're not where they want to be, they will either leave or they'll move one step closer to where they're going to be. But every time they have to take that step to get to where they want to be, there's the other option of them just leaving the site and saying, you know what, I'm just going to go find somebody else where it's just easier to find what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So we have a couple of questions. If we
okay.
Volunteer, yeah.
There are people listening to us. Great.
There are people listening. So everyone, reminder here. This is a live event, so you can leave comments, questions. We'll respond to them on air. So we have a question from Scott Dunrow, our friend.
Thank you, Scott.
So Scott asked, is list membership duration something that requires strategical thinking? Is there any advantage or disadvantage to setting a duration of 540 days, for example? So I know, Steve, you had said, okay, let's start out with that list. I guess what Scott is asking is, is there any reason we wouldn't want to do that?
Well, I can't think of any reason I wouldn't want to do that, but I can think of many reasons why I wouldn't want to use that list. Okay. Let's clarify. I'll explain that. Someone who's looking, again, let's go to the insurance thing. If you're looking for auto insurance, the chances are it's because you need it like right now. So your insurance has run out, or you've bought a new car and you need to insure it. Now, you're not going to shop around for 3 months for auto insurance because you're not going to sit without being able to drive your car for 3 months.
Nope.
So the chances are that if you're looking for auto insurance, you're going to make a decision about that. And again, you can test this, but you're going to make a decision in the next week, 10 days maximum. You're not going to be messing about looking at quotes much longer than that. And if you don't buy from us, then we lost you. We didn't manage to convert you.
Yeah.
But I do know that your auto insurance will come up for renewal in 12 months' time.
Right.
So if I have my 18-month list, I can build a list which, and we'll talk about this perhaps in a minute, but I can open up a time window So let me explain this. You come onto my site today and I'm selling auto insurance and you don't buy from me, okay? Today's, what is it, the 9th of February, okay? So I can set up you can go on one of my lists, and this list will be an 11-month list, or an 11.5-month list, okay? So that will take me up to next January, middle of next January, okay? You're on that list, and you're on another list which takes me then to the middle of next February, okay? So a 12.5-month list. So I can advertise, I can combine those two lists, and I can say, okay, I want everyone on the longer list, so 12.5 months, and I want no one on the shorter list, the 11.5 months. Now what that does is, I'm going to show my fingers, that creates a window where I know that a year ago you were looking for auto insurance on my website.
Yeah.
Because it was a year ago, I now know that you are in the market for renewal. So I can hit you quite hard with my remarketing, but I wouldn't want to hit you between next week and next January.
Yeah, right. I mean, you'd be wasting that money, right? You'd be doing that for something else. I've already signed up with whoever else I picked.
We assume that you have the auto insurance contracted. So as I said, that's one reason we can use that. We can start building windows by combining the lists. Actually, the best one I heard was I wish I had come up with this. I didn't, but I read about it on a blog one place, where someone for a hairdresser, they literally had a window that was like 4 weeks later. So they had a 1 week window 4 weeks after the first visit. So if they didn't get you the first week, they got you 4 weeks later, which is when apparently most people need to get a haircut. I don't have those kind of windows, don't work for me. But you know, that makes sense. It doesn't make sense to remarket to someone if they're not in the market. And with what your product or service may be, it's going to have a period where once a person's made a visit, they're either going to solve their problem or the problem's going to go away, but it will come back after a certain length of time. The other reason for having these 18-month or these longer lists would be to do remarketing that's not actually tied to the first visit. Okay. So let me explain that. So let's suppose you come. Let's suppose I sell shoes, okay, and I have a section on my website which is for kids' shoes. Okay, so I've got people coming on my website. They're looking at kids' shoes. Well, unless they're very bored kids, they're going to be parents who have kids. Okay, then so parents who are buying shoes for kids may buy the shoes when the kids need some shoes, when they broke their shoes, or when they lost one of their shoes. You know, because that's what kids do. And they came to the site. Now, if they buy the shoes from me or they buy them from someone else, doesn't really matter right now for ad purposes. But those people are likely to be buying shoes again just before the school term starts. Mm-hmm. So if I have them on a remarketing list, even if it's a very long list, and they're on it for 18 months, but I can hit them at a particular time when it makes sense for them to be looking for my product. So that's now more to do with what I'm selling rather than the fact that these people came on my website previously. They're just people who are more likely to be in the market for what I sell at this particular time. And I think that probably lends itself fairly well. I know it lends itself to other things as well. You know, say parents of children going back to school, Valentine's Day, which is just coming up. You know, someone who's been on your gift shop any time in the previous year, who bought something, you know, who looked at the sections, gifts for wives, gifts for girlfriends. They would be a perfect group of people to hit hard a couple of weeks before Valentine's Day. I say it's not a case of them having been on your website last week or the week before, but they are just an obvious target group who you may be able to bring back.
Okay, so that really process then is more about just being able to get the options and have these longer lists, and then you can break it out sort of from there based on your business, based on seasonality and all of these sort of different factors you're talking about.
I think Scott's question was a good question because what he's kind of implying is, would you ever actually want to just have your remarketing ad set to run to the same person continually for 18 months? And the answer to that is no, absolutely not. Although I do see that. I see that in my own experience.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're watching, but there are certain travel agencies who, they're just continually bombarding me with remarketing ads. So, yeah, I would never run a remarketing campaign for the full 18 months to visitors, but that gives me the opportunity to advertise for a specific, particular period of time, or for a particular period of time, for a particular event, for a seasonal thing, or whatever. Yeah, it gives me a lot of opportunities.
And then we have another question too that maybe we can talk about now, just to make sure we get to it, from Christos in Greece. Hi. And his question was maybe about going into another example. We talked a little bit about insurance agencies, for example. You mentioned travel a little bit. But so he's wondering about how you can use remarketing, for example, for a small hotel in a city, presumably in Greece, but maybe it could be somewhere else. It's a small city hotel, and how you might go about that.
That's a good question, because I think with small hotels in specific, with small hotels in specific cities, you are going to have an issue where the people who are coming to your website are probably looking for something which is almost going to be a one-off event. They probably won't be looking to, they'll be probably looking to book for a specific set of dates, and they will probably be, once they've made that booking, they probably won't be in the market to book again, maybe for a year or for 6 months. I mean, the kind of people who are booking regularly at a particular hotel are going to be fairly few and far between, I would think. If it's a tourist hotel, it's a business hotel, or a regular city hotel, then maybe not. But I guess the biggest thing there will be to test with the list durations. We tend to, and I'll come back to a problem with this, but what we tend to do with some of our clients in the hotel business, and I have a number of clients who have small hotels, we tend to hit people quite hard in the first 4 or 5 days. So we have maybe one list which is 4 days, and then another one which is another 4 days after that. So again, we build up combinations, so it'll be all of the people on this list and none of the people on that list, So we build these segmented lists, and we will hit people quite hard for a period. But you'll find that, with something like the hotels, we have found that it tails off quite quickly. Someone who's looking for a hotel in a small city, they're coming for a business trip, or they're coming for a weekend break, they're going to make that decision fairly quickly. So you've got to hit them quite quickly after their initial visit. Now, the problem that we've run into with this is that with your remarketing lists, you have to have a minimum of 100 people on the list. So if you've only got a 4-day window and you're only getting 20 people a day visiting your website, you're never going to hit that 100. So you're never going to be able to actually run it, and that is a difficulty. But if you've got a couple of 100 people visiting your website every day, then you've got a sort of 1,000 people or so in a 4 or 5 day list, which you can hit quite hard for those next 4 or 5 days to see if you can drag and bring in their reservation. The other thing perhaps to mention there as well is if you are doing that, be very aware of 2 groups of people. The first group of people would be the people who actually made a reservation. Like you can exclude them as soon as they've made the reservation and they get to your booking confirmation page. They should drop off the list, because you don't want to pay to run your ads to those people again. And the other group of people are probably the ones who came to your website and bounced straight off. Because if you go to a hotel website, you're probably going to look at the rooms, you're probably going to look at this. But if they've come to your website and they've gone, oh no, that's not for me, and they bounce straight off, well, I'd probably exclude them as well. So again, I'm not wasting money on people who made a very snap decision that what I was offering them wasn't for them, because they're going to be that much harder to convince. And I'd rather my budget go to people who spend a bit of time on my website, had a look around, and then that's perhaps where what I said before was interesting. You run an ad to those people a couple of days later and you say, oh, and we're going to, you know, because you came back to the website, if you make the booking now, there'll be a bottle of champagne in the room when you arrive. That helps you to just, you know, to close that deal. You don't want to offer a bottle of champagne to everybody who comes to your website, although maybe you would, but you know what I mean. It's like an extra little push, a little nudge more, or free parking. You know, in our parking, we won't charge you for the parking, or you'll get a bottle of wine with your meal, or whatever it is. You know, or 2 free movies on the pay-per-view. There's all kinds of things that you could offer to incentivize somebody to just make that booking there and then, because you've just offered them something that they didn't see the first time. They were kind of thinking, they've come back, they've still got to make a decision. Remember, if they're coming back on their remarketing ad, it's because they still haven't made a decision, they're still in the market. So, you know, there are lots of things I think you can do.
Great. And so we have another question here. I don't know, we can either go to that, Steve, or if you have other points to get to too, we can sort of bounce back and forth. But I guess the last question we have, at least queued up right now, is from Yelena, and she's asking whether there are any like must-have remarketing lists that you would recommend besides the besides the 540-day example. So I guess, and I think what I'm hearing a lot from you is it really does like depend on, of course, like the industry, right, and your business and your goals, and what your customers are doing. In her example, she's talking about more of like an e-commerce kind of business. But I guess in general, like what are some other go-to?
In general, whatever you're trying to get people to do on your website, so whatever your conversion is. Now, if it's e-commerce, it's probably a sale. If it's lead generation, it's a lead that's been generated. You know, they've signed up for a newsletter, or they've downloaded a white paper and you've captured their email address, or they've called you, whatever it is. Whatever the conversion on your website is, whatever the objective of your website is, those people who complete that should be on a list, definitely on a list of their own, because then you can do 2 things. The most obvious is you can exclude them from your current activities. So if you're trying to get somebody to sign up for a newsletter, once they've signed up for the newsletter, stop hitting them with the remarketing ads. You don't need to, because they've done what you wanted them to do. The other reason they're a useful list is because you can then upsell or cross-sell to those people. So someone who's already bought from one thing from you, they're an obvious group of people to try and sell them something else. So, for example, if you buy a set of golf clubs from me, well, next month I might try and sell you a pair of golf shoes, or I might try and sell you an offer of a box of golf balls, you know, or a golf vacation, whatever it is, you know. So there are if you've got existing customers, you want to stop trying to sell them what they've already bought, but you might want to try and sell them something else. So as I said, there are very good reasons for making a list of the people who have already converted. That's probably the first thing to do. The other list that I'm fond of making, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, I'm fond of making a list of the people that bounced, because I find that in general, people that bounced are probably the hardest to convert in any sort of remarketing. If they bounced off your website, they made a very quick decision about, this is not for me. Now, if they made a quick decision about this is not for me, then they're going to be a hard sell, and you're probably better off trying to reach people who looked around and thought, well, maybe this is for me, but not now. They're going to be easier to convert than the people who just made a snap decision and bounced off the website. Of course, it does depend. It does depend on the. It depends on the kind of business that you're in. It does depend on what, obviously, you know, the thing about this is that everything depends. It always depends. It's never cut and dry. But I think definitely those two would be my top two must-have lists. My bouncers and my converters. You know, because those give you perhaps the greatest level of initial level of segmentation.
Great. Perfect. Okay, I think that was really helpful.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think. I know that, so we've talked a little bit about, you know, setting up the code overall, right? We talked about being able to segment, sort of like slice and dice your lists through analytics, through AdWords as well, and then these overall lists that you can create, the really long 540-day list, to make sure that, you know, you have that group of people there so that you can start to segment out how it makes sense for your business.
Yeah, I think obviously, as we said, you know, everyone's business model is different, and everyone kind of knows their business. And I think you have to kind of think, remarketing is like the opportunity to talk to someone again. So if you had a bricks and mortar shop and someone came in and wandered around your shop and you attended them and you knew what they'd been interested in, if you then had the opportunity to go and sort of see them and to ask them to come back to your store, you know what you were going to tell them about. Listen, you remember those tennis rackets you were looking at last week? We've just got a new line in, and they've got a special offer or whatever it is. That's what you talk to them about. If they came in and looked at tennis rackets, you wouldn't go back to them and talk to them about golf clubs or fishing tackle. You know, you talk to them about what they'd expressed an interest in. So, and the segmentation kind of does that. You know, I mean, you can segment on all kinds of levels. I mean, one of the things we mentioned right at the beginning was we talked about the fact that your remarketing list will hit everyone, or will add everyone who visits your website, right? But we can segment that in terms of where they came from. So we may not want to advertise as aggressively or as regularly to someone who came in from from a directory as we do from someone who came from a referral. I mean, for example, imagine we had a report written about going back to the hotel that our Greek friend, I can't remember his name, but if we go back to the hotel that we were talking about, imagine you had a piece that was written on a really good and significant travel blog, and they talked about your hotel and said it was wonderful and, you know, it was a great place to stay and everything else. If you segmented the people out who came from the link on that travel blog, you could build an audience of those people. And you could go back to them with a campaign that referred to as seen on such and such a travel blog, and you could bring them back to a landing page that referred to the blog again and maybe showed a screenshot of the blog saying, you know, take advantage now and stay at the hotel that was referenced in such and such a blog. Now, that's a very powerful landing page for someone who originally visited your website from that particular referral source. So again, it's a question of how, you know, there are so many ways to slice and dice it, as you say. I mean, we had a client some years ago who we identified a group of people who were visiting the website and buying, not in huge numbers, but they were buying like in the early hours of the morning. I mean, I don't know what these people were doing, but they were buying like between 2 and 6 o'clock in the morning. There weren't many of them. There were very few. In fact, there were so few that we originally thought that maybe we would just schedule those time slots out. But when we ran the numbers, we found that actually, even though there were very few visitors, their spend or their spend per visitor was significantly higher than any of the other times of the day. And we segmented those out, and we called that segment the night owls. And we just segmented them out. And we could have run a remarketing campaign to them, specifically talking to them as people in the middle of the night, So we could have said, this is great for people who work the night shift, or whose hours are sort of back to front, or are you an insomniac, whatever it was, But we could target them specifically based on what we knew about their behavior.
Awesome. So I know we're coming a little bit toward the end of the time here. So I guess my question is there anything, I think that what you just said also, Steve, like really sums it up well. And I think what stuck out to me there is sort of thinking about if this person had come into your shop, right, versus come to your website, treating them more or less the same, like thinking about what you would want to bring their attention back to if you had that chance. Because that's essentially like if we, take away all the technical side of it, like that's what remarketing is.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the other thing, one of the things that we do, we get a little more aggressive is not the right word, but in marketing terms, we are a little more aggressive with our remarketing messages. So our calls to action tend to be stronger. The copy on our website tends to be stronger, more towards pushing people towards the conversion. Because basically, we can't push people on their first visit quite as hard. But if they come back and they've expressed a continued or an additional interest, well, then we can push them a little bit harder to complete the conversion. And at the end of the day, we're not losing out if we don't do that. If we do that. So what I'm saying is, if we push someone a little bit harder and they still don't convert, we haven't really lost anything because they didn't convert the first time anyway. It doesn't really matter. And we can be that little bit more pushy, a little bit harder sell, without that being the pitch on our main site, if that makes sense. Because that might be too pushy for a first-time visitor, but not too pushy for a return visitor. And I think this is what we kind of have to think about. I guess the other thing that we haven't really talked that much about was exclusions. And I think this is something also that a lot of people forget. I know we talked about excluding converters and excluding bouncers, but we can build exclusion lists as well. And I think, whatever your business is, it may be that if people haven't converted in 2 minutes on your website, they never do. They just wander around and they look around and they never make their minds up. So it may be that you say, anyone who's spent more than 3 minutes on my website, I'm not going to remarket to them because they're just looking and they're never going to convert. Every business is going to be slightly different. And so there are all kinds of things which you need to test. I think you need to test the duration of the lists. So does a week work for you, or does a month work for you? Or is it somewhere in between? Is it 6 months? Do people really take that long to make a decision about what you sell? Sometimes you don't necessarily want to advertise or remarket them straight away. Maybe you say, I'm gonna remarket to them for a month from now. So they're not going to see an ad of mine for a month, but then they'll see a month's worth of advertising. You've got to test these things and just see where the sweet spot is for you in your business. And I think the other important thing is, as I said, figuring out how often they should be seeing the ads. So the frequency caps, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is that they just they never put a frequency cap on the ads. So the amount that people are seeing it, I think it's a very thin line. And for some people, for me particularly, I get very annoyed very quickly, maybe because I do this and it annoys me when other people don't control it quite so much. But if you go onto a website and then the next day, every single website you go to has got this same ad, that can be really frustrating. So I always play with the frequency cap as well, so that people will only see so many ads from me. Because it's a thin line between between remarketing and stalking.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it also depends a bit on the product too, right? If it's something that I am looking to book a flight, right, and I'm going to do it sometime this week, maybe it's okay that I'm seeing more ads. But if it is something where I'm, I don't know, doing like online shopping for a pair of shoes or a shirt that I liked, that's not as pressing, and I definitely don't want to see that shirt follow me around on every page of the internet.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I said I think you have to test these things, and you have to you have to run little experiments for yourself. Say, okay, what if I increase my my frequency cap, and instead of seeing 4 or 5 ads a day, I let people see 8 or 9. Does my conversion rate go down, or does it go up? If it goes down, well, then people are getting upset about seeing so many of my ads, so I've got to bring it down and be a little more careful. All of the, well, in pretty much everything we do in AdWords, we have to test, and we have to just try and find the sweet spot among things. One of the things that I mentioned in the article, and one of the things that we've done, which has been quite successful, is we've run similar ads in different remarketing campaigns to the same audience. Now, the way that works, and again, the example I gave in the article, imagine you're promoting a new model of car, and this car has various features. So it may be very fuel efficient. It may have very low emissions. It may have a very good acceleration. It may have a very good price and a finance package or whatever. I can run 4 different ads or 5 different ads that have a very similar look and feel to them, but each one of them gives a different message. And I can put each of those in a different ad group within my campaign, and I can set my frequency so that people will only see 1 ad from 1 ad group per day. But that means that everybody who's on my remarketing list might see 4 or 5 ads for my product, but each ad has a different feature that's being promoted. So we're getting kind of the double benefit there. We're getting the benefit of them seeing what is essentially the same car, but we're also being able to give them 5 different reasons why it's the car they should buy. So again, we can play with the frequency. We can play with frequency there, and have different creatives. Not vastly different creatives, but different creatives that look the same but give a slightly different message or a slightly different call to action each time. I've seen that done quite effectively by companies.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all of this information, Steve. I think we have there's still more to talk about as well. And I know we still have some questions. What I tell folks to do is, if you go to the community, the Google Advertiser community, where you found the link to this event and the video, we're going to be saving a recording of this video and putting it up there. And if you have additional questions that we didn't have time to get to, by all means post them there in comments, or you can post them in sort of the boards as a whole, and Steve and I can help out and answer those questions and sort of follow up. But yeah,
I know we've talked about things that I've done and things that I've read about people doing and what have you. I'd love to hear from people what they've done with remarketing. So yeah, do go on the comments and let us know how you've used remarketing, because I still feel like I'm just scratching the surface. I think there's a lot that can be done, and the more you think about it, the more you segment. I think the more you realize what the potentials are.
Yeah. Well, awesome. So thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. Thanks again, Steve, for joining us and sharing all of your knowledge. And yeah, please share your own experiences or any additional questions on the community itself. And Steve has also mentioned an article that he wrote a couple of times. So Steve, you wrote a pretty in-depth article too about creative remarketing strategies, and that's living on the Google Advertiser community as well, right?
Yeah, that's up in the Learn section, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you very soon on the community.
Okay, bye.